all aware, Canada lost a vote in 2010 to have a seat at the UN Security Council. Most attribute that defeat to Canada's strident support of Israel and the anger that created in some Arab countries or their allies who had squat at the UN. Most conservatives care little for the UN, so losing that vote did not diminish the Prime Minister's commitment to Israel. The longer game, both abroad and domestically, is more important to him. At home, Harper's strong backing of Israel has allowed him to cut into the Liberal Party's operations. It's cut into their dominance of Jewish voters and Jewish money. As well, Harper has used Middle East issues to cause tension among his domestic opponents. That's the aptly named approach of wedge politics, which I'm sure you often hear about in your classes here. But here is a clear case, and this goes back to what we talked about a moment ago, of knowing who your friends are, sticking with them no matter how unpopular some might find your position to be. There is no moral ambiguity. And there are also transactional benefits which make it all the better in the eyes of the Prime Minister. Now, Canada as energy superpower. I realize we're in Ontario, and I can't pass up the opportunity to joke as a Newfoundlander, ha 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 ha, it's too bad you're a have-not province. And we're a have province, we have all the resources and you don't. I'll give out vouchers for money later on down the way, but it's okay. Sorry, listen, when I was here at Appleby, we had to listen to the greatness of Ontario, so it's nice to be standing in Appleby at a lectern, giving Ontarians the metaphorical finger, which of course I wouldn't do to you. That would be wrong. Dave, you're going to have to edit that part out of the tape. Now, we don't want the parents to see that one. That could be bad. Now, Canada as energy superpower. Remember we heard a few moments ago that the central governing tenet of Harper's operating philosophy was strength is not an option. It is a vital necessity. Strength comes not just from military power. Now, I have a note to myself to resist the opportunity to make a smart-ass comment about the F-35 fighter jet, so I won't. Everybody else is doing that at the moment. Just because you missed it by 10 billion, who cares? Strength also comes from being an economic power. In Canada, a large portion of our current and future economic might comes from natural resources. Canada as energy superpower was something Harper also started to advance in his first term of government. He propelled his narrative with this data, and I don't think any of it exists in Ontario. Anyway, we are currently the 5th largest energy producer in the world. It does in Michigan, Nolan, don't worry. We rank 3rd and 7th in global gas and oil production. We generate more hydroelectric power than any other country on Earth. We are the world's largest supplier of uranium. The oil sands, note I call them the oil sands, are the 2nd largest oil deposit in the world, bigger than Iraq, Iran, or Russia, exceeded only by Saudi Arabia. And this perhaps is the most staggering and may create economic opportunity for many of you who decide to stay in Canada. By 2015, Canadian oil production is forecast to reach almost 4 million barrels a day. 4 million barrels of oil a day. We are a petrostate. Now, coming from Canada's newest, wealthiest region, the West, and an area strongly supportive of his party, it makes complete sense that Harper wants to maximize Canada as energy superpower. In this push, we have recently seen how domestic opponents or perceived opponents of this agenda are labeled as radicals and pillared by many government-friendly media outlets or pundits. Members of European parliaments have also taken a few in the face when they called our oil sands the tar sands. Again, popular or not, this Prime Minister goes for it and seems not to waver. Whether his hardball tactics will sink him or not, it's too early to tell. But some do find his assertiveness out of character for a Canadian leader. I mean, aren't we supposed to be the beer-drinking pal who wants everyone to get along? It is kind of fascinating that the Keystone Energy Project, which President Obama rejected last fall, has become such a central piece in the Republican primaries and the American election in general. Republicans, of course, are arguing that Obama killed 40,000 jobs in economically impaired America by saying no to Keystone. The Prime Minister was in Washington last week, where he spoke at the Woodrow Wilson Institute. He took the argument in a different direction and said, Canada will sell oil sands product to China if the Americans don't want it. He said, we don't want to be restricted to one captive buyer, the Americans. So you can see, the Harper Doctrine, rarely about nuance, often about opportunity. Next, standing up for human rights and gay rights in the Commonwealth. Some find it surprising to see that Canada, under Harper's leadership, has been a strong defender of gay rights in the Commonwealth. Many wrongly assume the Conservative Party of Canada is a conclave of social conservatives, where sexual orientation only goes in a straight line. That's wrong. In January of this year, while speaking to the Royal Society in London, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, John Baird, showed a side of the Harper government some found astounding. He proclaimed, dozens of Commonwealth countries currently have regressive and punitive laws in the books that criminalize homosexuality. Throughout most of the Commonwealth Caribbean, colonial-era laws remain on the books that could impose draconian punishments on gay people simply for being gay. This contributes to a social stigma and violence against gay people. Baird called on Commonwealth governments to follow the example of progressive countries like Canada and the United Kingdom, and not to willfully ignore their obligations to protect the rights of citizens, regardless of sexual orientation. He further added, we will continue to press countries in the Commonwealth to live up to their international obligations and uphold the basic contract any government should have with its people. He said, the criminalization of homosexuality is incompatible with the fundamental Commonwealth value of human rights. The sanctity of individual rights and freedoms is central to most conservative thought. Couple that with Canada being a leader in the Commonwealth and a strong, reinvigorated alliance with Britain, it makes absolute sense that the government took the position it did. Now let me step back to David Howie for a moment. I think if he were here with us today, he would want us, as Norman Patterson would, to be asking ourselves a variety of questions about the choices made by Harper and Canada's current place in the world. The list of inquiries might include, is Canada making a difference in the world? Is it different from previous eras? Did we need to change our approach? Did we change our approach? Is Canada respected? This is my favorite one. The quintessential Canadian identity insecurity. Do people like us? And what's the purpose of what we're doing abroad? Are we benefiting at home? What have we done wrong? What can we do better? I have my own answers to those questions. Some of them you may have seen foreshadowed there. While all of our opinions are of value, for me and David Howie, of equal and greater value is to keep searching, digging, and employing a relentlessness of inquiry and getting answers as to why things are the way they are. Moving from Canada on the world stage, I want to finish up. It sounds like we're near, but there's still 10 pages, don't worry. Moving from Canada on the world stage, I want to finish up by looking at youth and international activism. How your peers, and potentially some of you, have been trying to change the face of the planet. If we were trying to change the face of the planet when I was here before, this wouldn't have been water, by the way. This would have been vodka, but I'm glad it's water. When I was here at Appleby in the mid to late 80s, the international issues of the day were things like the ending of the Cold War, famine in Africa, and blowing up apartheid in South Africa. As I recall, celebrity activism was at its most prominent and potent levels. Young film stars and musicians took to the most accessible mediums of the day, movie, theaters, and TV screens, you may be familiar with them, to push world community and its leaders to bring forward change. Sylvester Stallone, in his Rambo and Rocky films, took shots at nasty Russians while advancing the virtues of freedom-loving Americans. If you want to know who he is, you can watch AMC. They play Rambo just about every weekend. I'll loan you the disc set. It's great. Anyway, Boy George, George Michael, Canadian Bryan Adams, Michael Jackson, and others sang "We Are the World" to bring attention to the plight of starving in Africa. Bruce Springsteen told the universe he wasn't going to play Sun City, all the while pushing for an end to apartheid and the release of Nelson Mandela. Something, by the way, Canada played a lead role in. One of our greatest foreign affairs moments was the leadership that was provided by Canada to get Nelson Mandela released from prison on Robben Island. Now, candid admission before continuing. I suspect if you borrowed my iPod, now as opposed to that historic artifact known as the Walkman, do you know what Walkmans are? Okay, good. Will probably has a couple. Or you borrow one of your teachers, you discover, this is embarrassing to admit, but it's true in my case, that we've downloaded the ancient rhythms of the Culture Club or Bruce Springsteen. In my case, I draw the line at Michael Jackson. I'd like to preserve some credibility. Now, the fiasco of Kony 2012 aside, and I'd love your views on that, over the last 18 months we've seen some fantastic examples of youth-led or dominated activism that has attempted or has actually changed existing political conditions. Driven in some cases by social media, a domain where millennials, do you all know what a millennial is? No, you're millennials. You're anybody born who is now under the age of 30, which would be all of you, and is 16. So you are all millennials. You're apparently more comfortable, millennials, enabling your actions through social media. Many of the social media agents were clever enough to realize the fascination in the mainstream, many of the social media agents were clever enough to realize the fascination, those in the mainstream media have with technology, and the ability of technology, plus its structure, to assemble mass audiences to then have those audiences take action. Two specific examples I would like to go over quickly are the Arab Spring and the Occupy movement. And as these are still social movements in motion, these are observations to date which may be altered after deeper and more comprehensive reflection and analysis. That's basically a line to say if I got this wrong, you can't blame me for it because